What's up, peoples? How you doing? It is the author day. I am having a day of authors, and I am in love with this. I mean, the books, the how would I say this? You know how people can get over certain things by just writing things down, getting through circumstances, clearing their minds, being imaginative, creating a different world, talking about things that happen. I mean, there's just so many different things going on. If you haven't picked up a book today, you're probably behind on your imagination scale because a book is amazing and we all need to at least read one every 3 days. And this gentleman here wrote an amazing book. Mr. Tom Hood is on the show today. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here. So tell me, okay, did you know you was going to write a book? And this is something I always ask people because there's so many different like beginning stories. I had no idea. If you told me 2 years ago I was going to write a book, I would have told you you were a liar. I mean, I've gotten that so many times. So tell me about you. How did you know you were going to be writing a book?
Well, I didn't really, but what happened was my friend Dwight Van de Veet and I discovered that we both had an interest in an author, namely Erving Goffman.
Mm.
We were both both working in the same building on the University of Tennessee campus. And on the top floor of that building, I mean, I was on the 8th floor, I was on the 9th floor, he was on the 8th floor, but on the top floor, there was like a coffee lounge. And we started talking, and hey, we were both interested. And then we started talking. He said, well, you know, what about if we taught a course together about this guy? And they said, okay, but interdisciplinary teaching was not done a lot. So what we
Mm.
said was, well, let's just talk to our department. You schedule a philosophy course, and I'll schedule a sociology course, and then we'll schedule it for the same day, the same hour, in the same room. And we'll tell our departments, and they'll say, yeah, you can do it. I mean, just don't plan extra pay for doing that. Anyway, so we did it. And I thought, well, that's great. So the first day that we came to class, we agreed that Dwight would lecture one day, I would lecture one day, and then the third day we would discuss each week, because it was a three-day a meeting, 3 hour class, one day Monday, one day Wednesday, and one day Friday. So Dwight comes, and the first day he passes out his lecture written out. And I thought, uh-oh, I guess I'm going to have to write out my lecture.
Oh,
So
no.
that was the first time I thought, okay, maybe I am going to write a book. But
Wow.
but by the end of the class, and we during that class invited Goffman to come. And Goffman said, you guys are doing a seminar and you're trying to cover all the books that I've got in print already? And we said, yeah. Now this was 1971, long time ago.
Yeah, that was before
Anyway,
my time.
right. Anyway,
Just
but
1 year. Okay, I'm not that young. Just one
okay.
year.
Anyway, but anyway, so he said, well, you mean you guys are teaching a course on my work? Hey, that'll probably never happen again. But sure, if you can come up with travel money, I'd be happy to come down. So he came down and he talked to us. He said, now I don't want to do a public presentation, but I'd love to talk to your class. So he came down and he told us about this big book he was working on. They'd been working on for quite a while, Frame Analysis. And so if you look in the copy of Goffman's master work, he mentions that parts of the book have been given as lectures at Brandeis University, at Edinburgh University in Scotland, and the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So we thought, hey, that's pretty good company.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it is.
So anyway, so he came down, he talked to us, we talked to him, and by the end of the class, we had a set of lectures on Goffman's work to that point. So then a couple of years later, we said, well, Goffman's written some more stuff. We should have another class. And so we did another class and we invited him down. He came again that time. He did the slide presentation that he had done on gender advertisements, where he actually analyzed behavior, particularly the behaviors associated with gender, by analyzing the way women were portrayed in magazine advertisements.
Mm.
He just did clippings of it. And so there's this wonderful book he did, which is called almost a visual sociology book called Gender Advertisements. So he
Okay.
did that presentation. And that one he said, sure, let's have an audience. So he filled a lecture hall that housed 180 people for that presentation. And then the last presentation he did, we invited him down one more time, and that time we scheduled him for a full day. We had a variety of departments that contributed and what have you. Unfortunately, there was a fire in the Atlanta airport, and he ended up only being able to do the evening presentation by the time he got to campus.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, by the time we had done the course 3 different times over a 20-year period, we had a good bit of written material, one by a sociologist and one by a philosopher. Me, the sociologist, him, the philosopher. And we said, you know what? There's no other book out there on the market that teams up a sociologist and philosopher. And yet there is increasing interest in Goffman. And Goffman's books, by the way, which first started being published in the late 1950s, with the presentation of self in everyday life, then quite a few out in the 60s, a few more later, and then frame analysis. And then the final book, Forms of Talk, I think came out in the 1990s, right after he died.
Wow.
He died the year he was president of the American Sociological Association.
Oh, wow.
So by the early 90s, he had become prominent enough that the American Sociological Association elected him president. But then he developed stomach cancer, which got bad, and he actually was not even able to give his presidential address in person. So, but his presidential address, called the Interaction Order, is a very good piece. And it points out what Goffman had been working on, because in terms of he has always been a sociologist. He said, I'm not, not something else. I'm really a sociologist. He analyzed the social order by focusing on 2 people in interaction with each other, like you and me talking together here. And what goes on, what happens in interaction? How is that possible anyway? How do we come to understand each other? What's going on? By the time he wrote Frame Analysis, he'd gotten the attention of linguists, particularly social linguistics. And so his last visit down, when he did a presentation called essentially The Social Psychology of the Lecture, he said, the people that really understand what I'm doing, sociologists are not too keen on picking up on this, but linguists are. They understand me. They understand me, and English departments, started some of my colleagues in the English department started talking to me. Hey, we're interested in Goffman, keep in touch with us on this kind of thing.
Wow.
So the Goffman Lectures shows that evolution up to the point of it doesn't really have very much about Forms of Talk in it, because it really came out, Forms of Talk really came out after I had managed to put this stuff together. But because Dwight had become ill after he retired and I was available, so I said, okay, I've got these lectures. I'll try and put them all in one format so we can actually do it. On
Mm-hmm.
the other end, then I said, well, but what about submitting them to a publisher? I
Mm.
said, if I submit them to a publisher, I'm going to be hard up to try and to revise the philosophy section. That I didn't do that. I can revise the and so I did. I updated the sociology section, but the philosophy section, I just had to pretty much leave what Dwight had done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Wow.
So
It's a
that's,
book in many, many years of making. 40, was that 51 years?
yeah, by the time you look at it now, the book actually was published originally in 2017, I think. But
Okay.
okay, it's been out a couple years. All of a sudden, though, just within this last year, I've been getting calls from people. Like I had two calls just before this interview was to take place from two different groups who said, hey, we'd like to represent your book.
Oh,
But in the world of self-publishing, representing your book means we would like to charge you.
yeah.
We would like to charge you some money to represent your book.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I understand that. Definitely. I know all about that. All
Yeah,
about that. Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sure you do.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You should write a book and we will publish it. It's like,
Yeah, right. It's only this much. And then
yeah.
but after you've published it, then we want to charge you more to publicize it for you.
Yeah. Oh, that doesn't include like promotions and putting it on our
Right.
website. That's just helping you write it.
Yeah, right.
That's it. It's
Anyway,
like, dude, I could have done that myself.
yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah.
so a friend of mine by the name of Gary Allen Fine, who has written many books
Hmm.
and he holds a name chair at Northwestern University. And I had reviewed a couple of his books before they were published by university presses. Gary has not, I don't think he's done any self-publishing. I think he's always gone with the university press. But he said, Tom, he said, I'll do a review for you for Contemporary Sociology, which is the book review journal for the American Sociological Association. So he did a review there. And then I think that Ex Libris hired a couple of reviews from like Kirkus and Blue Line. And then there's another one. So there have been some reviews out there. And the book has sold, but I think it's sold mainly in digital format.
Yeah.
And that does not surprise me because the digital format you can get for under $5 and the paperback's $15. So,
Well, I mean, it costs money to put it on paper. I mean, and they got to
oh
ship
yeah,
it and all kind of stuff.
yeah,
So yeah,
that's right.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Digital is easier for people, especially since they can put it on their phone and read it or have a program read it or whatever. It's easier. It definitely is easier. But fortunately, your book is not too far off. I mean, we haven't changed too much in society for it to be off. Plus, you've updated one part of it already. I love the fact that, you're still you got this going. It's a book that's been in the making, and literally you guys are the experts on these two subjects about the book. So tell me like one thing that really really stands out, that a part of the book that you really truly love and that still is relevant right now.
Okay. To me, the thing that's important right now is that it's very hard for people, it seems to me, like to understand how important it is to be able to listen to each other and to be able to watch each other and to understand how deep communication is. What Goffman does in one chapter in
Hold on, hold on,
frame analysis.
hold on. Okay.
Yeah. In one chapter in frame analysis is called the frame analysis of talk. And what he, it's one of the later chapters in the book. And in that particular chapter, he talks about the different kinds of stances that people take when they're talking about each other, to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take that, you can take those four different things: principal, audience, strategist, and the other one, which doesn't come to mind right at this particular moment. And you can analyze a passage like that famous passage in chapter 8 of the book of Romans, where Paul talks about how it's not him that's actually doing the sin, but the sin that resides within him is the really agent kind of thing. You can take this. Well, what people have to understand, if they're going to understand each other, and this is so important right now, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about race just lately, because I've been reading the 1619 Project, which I'm sure you've heard of. And the 1619 Project, I mean, it tells me things that I never was taught in history. And I know that if I am going to, hey, I've been white all my life, and I know that there are things, you know how long it took me to understand why it was that a good friend who did work for us, he did block work, and he butchered hogs for us. Do you know how long it took me to understand why he had a barber chair in his basement? He was a black man in Southwest Michigan. And I didn't realize that he had a barber chair in his basement, because if you happened to be a black man, you couldn't go downtown in my little county seat town and get a haircut in the barber shop.
No, you couldn't. You couldn't sit in that seat. You wouldn't even be able to go in.
You know, and it wasn't that there was a lot of evidence of discrimination, but that was one place where it still went on. And I thought, and I didn't recognize that until I read America's Original Sin by Jim Wallace, when he did a compilation of stuff, the guy that did the Sojourners Community in Washington. And I'd been through graduate school at that point, and somehow that hadn't dawned on me. Why Mr. Goins had a barber chair in his basement. And I'd been over and in that barber chair too, because my dad would come to me and he'd say, "Hey, Tom, hey, Mr. Goins will cut our hair for $1."
Wow.
So, you know, we have to be able to not only listen to each other, but to watch each other and to think about that. And that's what Goffman teaches us. And that's why Goffman is important. And that's why I'm glad that I wrote the book with Dwight. And I'm glad that there are still people reading it. And I'm glad that people who read it and read Goffman will understand that how we think about ourselves is a very changeable thing. It's a social production that comes about in our interaction with each other. And how we think about ourselves is something pretty darn flexible. And we're involved in the producing of that. And so are the other people that we interact with. And we need to be very conscious of that kind of thing. So that's why I'm glad I wrote the book.
I am glad you wrote it too. You know, we have to bring to light the situations that are uncontrollable. Like literally, I was just born You know, we were just born. You were born to your family. I was born to mine.
Yeah,
And there should be, if you're a good person, if you're sweet, you're kind, you're loving, you're caring, that should be the quality that you look for in a person,
absolutely.
and not the color of their skin or their origins or
Right,
anything like that.
right,
To me, it just makes no sense
right.
that I'm judged because I walk into a room and I have melanin.
Hey, you know what? And it's much more important for me to watch your gestures, to listen to your tone of voice, to listen to what you're saying,
Yeah.
to thinking, seeing how you're reacting to me. It's very much important. That's important. That
Yeah.
part's important.
Yeah. I know. I was in high school, not to like step on everything, but this kind of relates to what you're talking about. I was in high school
Yeah,
and I hung out with all my friends. They were my friends.
yeah.
And one girl came up to me and she says, "Oh, I can't believe you're hanging out with that white girl." And I'm like, "Where?" Girl,
Yeah,
what are you
yeah.
talking about? You know, it's like, where, what? Oh, oh. I was like, huh? She's like one
Oh
of my
my.
friends. And I
Yeah,
didn't realize because I don't care.
right,
It doesn't bother me. And
right.
so it's like, oh, I can't believe, oh, and people get mad if you're walking down the street, even nowadays, with someone of a different color than you are, and you're black, and you're walking down the street with a white person or an Asian person, people look at you with this
Yeah, you know
that's
that.
that
Yeah,
skin,
I mean,
and it's like, what are you looking at? What happened? It's like, where? What? You know, you start
yeah,
you start smelling yourself. Like, what did I do? I didn't fart. I know I didn't fart. I mean, you go through these whole things, and it's not because you're you. It's because you're walking with them, and it doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand that,
I
and I
understand.
think Goffman is going to be the key to us understanding a lot of things.
I think he is too. And I think he is too. And I think that, he has one book that is really very helpful to a lot of people. It's called Stigma,
Mhm.
and the subtitle is The Management of Spoiled Identity.
Mm,
And he deals with these issues within the context of how people think about themselves. He talks there, he doesn't talk about race, but he certainly talks about other things like, the stain that some people get as a birthmark across their face, the wine stain kind of thing. And he talks about people that have like a colostomy and
mhm,
have to manage a colostomy and the kinds of things that go along with that.
mhm,
And the people that maybe they've had an amputation
mhm.
and the things that go along with that. There are all kinds of things that people make judgments about just on the basis of gross physical appearance. And you just can't do that.
No, no, how are they going to control that?
Right.
I mean, okay, you were born and there was a birthmark on your face and it looks like wine stain.
Right.
And what do you do about that?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, yeah, I don't, I,
You don't do that about that. You say, okay, that's something that I've got to get past. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
how you can't do anything about it.
Right. Right.
So why are people like that? That's what I want to know. And
Well,
your
uh,
book talks about this.
well, the book talks about how Goffman talks about it. We talk about it some, particularly in the chapters when we talk about stigma.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in stigma, because Goffman, I think he wrote stigma because he recognized that spoiled identity is a general kind of problem
Hmm.
that, and he really is trying to talk about. He doesn't ever talk about race really in any of his books,
Hmm.
but but race would qualify under the way
Yeah.
in which he treats spoiled identity.
Right.
So yeah, you can apply what Goffman says there, and and some chapters also in frame analysis you can use to apply to that.
Yeah. I
It's
think,
just that
wow.
what Goffman does do
Mm-hmm.
is he makes us very conscious
Mm-hmm.
of um, how even a really we don't at one point in time sociologists were wedded to the idea of status and role, and what Goffman did, particularly in a book called Relations in Public, and then later in Frame Analysis, is he said, we got to get beyond taking something as simple as a uniform and saying, okay, this person's got on the uniform of a policeman, therefore they must be bad or they must be
Right.
good or what
Yeah.
have you. Got to get beyond that. Don't think about that. Recognize that you've got to look at how the person's behaving. That's the important thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah. That's exactly how I want to live my life.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
it's so simple.
It's so simple. Absolutely.
But yet, why is it so difficult for people to acknowledge that it is that simple?
I don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, I still see the picture of that man wearing a police uniform, kneeling on a person's neck for 9 minutes. And I say, what's going on there? I mean, there are other people who have been through training. There are people yelling at that guy. What's going on? you know, I mean, and I look at that and I say, we have got to get beyond granting him the privilege to do that for 9 minutes.
I agree. That is just horrible.
It was. And the only way I could understand people allowing that to go on for 9 minutes was that somehow there was the barrier of his uniform.
Yeah.
You know, they're saying, okay, that's a, and well, thank you for the court system that convicted him.
I agree. I
I
agree.
mean,
That man did not have to pass away for whatever they pulled him over for. I mean, there's just so many different instances where, like the gentleman that just shot up that grocery store not so long ago, and they have handcuffed him and gently put him into the back of the car.
yeah,
Why? What about 45 minutes before you go inside of a school to get a person who's murdering children? Why?
I don't know. And then once again, you could say in Uvalde, if people are hearing cries for people please come in, what
Yeah.
have you, and somehow they're saying, no, there's somebody else in charge here. We got to wait for them to tell us to go. Okay, come on.
No, I would lose my job.
Right.
I'd lose my job and be like, well, y'all wait for him right here. I'm going inside.
Yeah.
How about that mother that went inside and got her kids?
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
have been that mother. I would have been that mother.
Yeah.
I would have been that mother that
Absolutely.
went in and risked my life,
Right.
my children out because nobody else. And they arrested her in the beginning, and somehow she convinced them to unhandcuff her, and then she ran for it. And I would have done the same thing.
Right.
The same thing.
So
No.
we have to recognize, that there are times when you have to say, okay, what's going on here?
Right.
Let's pay attention to what's actually going on. Let's not talk about what maybe should go on, quote unquote. So let's respond to the situation.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so anyway,
Well, where can people find your book?
well, it's available on Barnes and Noble. It's available on Amazon, and it's available in a number of bookstores. I'm hoping it's going to be available in a lot of bookstores, and um, and I'm thinking about doing a new edition just to make sure that it gets a little bit more, because I can add the chapter. I could add a chapter, for example, on forms of talk.
Right.
And so I've been talking with the press about it, and seeing whether or not that it's worth the candle of doing
I
it.
think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think we need it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna make a very impromptu call. Okay. And this is a serious call. You know, we're talking to a gentleman that has my heart right now, because he's a human being and he loves other human beings, and doesn't see a need for this discrimination that's going on, and I don't see it either. I'm going to say right now, if you want to change, if you see yourself not being a part of this prejudice movement, this movement against people because of the color of their skin or the origin or whatever the case may be,
Whatever it is,
and you want to change, you need to get this book.
Yeah.
You need to get this book. You need to read this book and then read it again and then read it again. Because I'm going to let you know right now, the book, you can't judge a book by its cover. Just because you see me dark doesn't mean you know I'm Black.
Right.
I'm a human being.
That's right.
And I love my friends and my family. And I love this gentleman here, Tom Hood, who did what he did to bring out the prejudice. We need to discover each other as a human race.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even Dwight makes his second chapter is a human being, the human being.
And it pains me to see that we have to go through this because I'm dark.
Hey,
I don't get
it. And you know what? I mean, I just, over the course of my 84 years, I've had a lot of experiences, and some of them said to me, well, I understand why the person did that. I understand why a person who had a different color skin than I was, and I greeted this person coming into my house. And I said, I'm so glad you came. I said, let me give you a hug. And she said, wait a minute. I'm not sure whether I want you to hug me or not. And I mean, I understand where she was coming from. She was a lawyer. She had been taking cases dealing with environmental injustices across the country. Where did they locate landfills in a lot of communities? She was from Houston. Landfills were located in low income and often Black communities. So, I mean, I know where she was coming from.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry that she had to come from there, kind of thing.
Yeah, I know.
So it works both ways.
It does. It does. I mean, we've let things get to us to the point where we've become very skeptical about people. And I think it was more like, hey, wait a minute, are you authentic?
Henry Gates' new book on the Black church, he did the PBS series, but then he decided to do a book. I just finished his book on the Black church. What a wonderful book. Anyway, but that's another story.
Yeah, but I mean, people need to go ahead and read this. I think if you're looking for a change, if you're looking to find people who are being people and they're not being a color, they're just being who they are. They love you regardless of where you come from, your skin color. Right. I know that you are welcome in many barbecues where all us Black people are. You can come and eat food with us. We don't care. Right. And then most of the time it's like, people come and say, I can't believe you're hanging out with that person. You're like, who? Give me, it's like, you didn't even notice. It's like,
But
what are you talking about? Who? What? Huh? Yeah, it's like that, guys. It's like that. And so you need to, maybe the experiences that you've had aren't where
right.
you need to be. Maybe you need to not be with those people. Because I know
And
plenty of people and plenty of colors and creeds and nations that love you, and they don't even see what other people, they're like, who are you talking about? They don't
yeah,
even care.
yeah, let's see if we can't just pay attention, listen with your not only your ears and your eyes, but listen with your full attention, and disregard all that
Yeah,
noise. Disregard the noise.
definitely, definitely. Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Hood, for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure having you. It's just wonderful to see that you've done something that's going to change the lives of so many different people that may perceive otherwise. They've been taught things that just don't exist, really.
I I'm hoping so. I'm
I'm
hoping
hoping.
so. I mean, I know that's why Goffman wrote.
Mm-hmm.
He has another book that has changed stuff. I know he wrote a book based on his observations in a mental institution in Washington, D.C., I think St. Elizabeth, called Asylums.
Mm-hmm.
And he points some stuff out there that, and in another essay that he's got in one of his books called The Insanity of Place, he talks about how, if a person comes out of treatment for a mental institution, don't think that because they just have been in treatment, that somehow you got to necessarily treat them a different way.
Right. You
You
don't.
know, he said, it may take a person a long time to get back into their family, because
Exactly.
the family says, wait a minute, are you okay now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hood. Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to have that information about the book in the description box below and a link so that you can purchase it. And I admonish you, please, please don't judge a book by its cover. A lot of times you're missing out on an amazing relationship, a friendship, and you just never know. It might even be the love of your life behind that book cover.
Yeah.
So you just don't know. All
Thank you
right,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. And thank you guys again. And don't forget to dare to be different. Until next time, guys. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.